I just played a game in the Scandinavian defense that was very thematic of our pawn play in the Scandinavian, so I wanted to make a quick video on it. Um, but it also had a really fascinating end game. And the last game I played was also a Scandi, and I saved that game with a similar theme. And so I'm thinking I'll make a video on this kind of end game tactic, I guess you would say. It's not a tactic, it's a theme. But I reached this position right here in my game, and I was black, and my opponent resigned here. But let's just, to start it out, let's just look at this position here. Now, this is actually even, remarkably. So the opponent resigned thinking I'm going to just gobble up all his pawns, promote a pawn, and just easily win. But amazingly, this is actually a drawn position. So just pause your video and just take a few minutes and just see if you can come up with any ideas. It's not the easiest thing to see, but we'll look at it at the very end. And it's pretty cool, actually. All right, so now that you thought about that end game position a little bit, let's look at the actual game and look at the pawn structure ideas. So this game, I'm not going to spend much time on the opening or anything. The point is to get to the middle game. I actually played the opening pretty poorly. I have Charter Spectrum for my internet provider, and I have issues sometimes. And I lost my connection, so I had to scramble to get my phone and play it on cellular on my phone. So I was, got a little bit behind in time, not too bad out of the opening, but I had to scramble, boot that thing up, open my chess.com app and get it flipped on. So I didn't play the opening optimally, but that's the beauty of this Scandi is, you got a fairly high margin for error because the structure is so solid. And so here, let's start examining the pawn structure from here. So one of our themes in the Scandi is to put pressure on this d4 square. And so that's what I did. And so he responded by adding additional support to that d4 pawn. Now, one thing to note is that a lot of times their rook would ideally be on e1. It kind of creates more problems for us on that square sometimes, depending on the situation. But we get in this position because his rook is on d1 instead of e1. I don't have to worry about these x-rays on my queen if stuff gets liquidated off on d5. So that was just one kind of thing I noted as I was playing the game. And I was more than happy if he was going to exchange this. We have less space, and so it's to our advantage if pieces get traded off. And he ended up making this move here, which is, I think, a poor move for a couple reasons. But, this guy was rated about 50 points higher than me at the time of the game. And so I'm completely fine getting a draw with black. That's one thing, that anybody around my rating within 100 points, below me, or higher, I'm more than happy to take a draw with black and try to get my wins with white. But what I found, I actually have a really high win percentage in this Scandi because when players are stronger than you, they get in this position they think is good and they're trying to find a way to win it. And they just get frustrated and eventually they end up making mistakes. And so this isn't like a terrible mistake or anything, but it does allow me to just trade off this bishop. And then, I'm going to be certainly equal, if not a little bit better. And my thought here is well, I kind of like this because now I can exchange off this knight and I'm going to be left, with my share of control over this open file, which is going to be the most important thing if we get to an endgame. And that, in fact, is what happens, and we'll look at that. So here I gain a tempo on his queen, and I'm able to get yet more pressure on d4. So once again, using this theme of pounding on this d4 square, to make gains in our position. So he plays c3, which is the best move. He has to, he can't lose this pawn. So here we have another thematic move in the Scandi, and this is like the pure beauty of the Scandi is its simplicity. We only have a few themes that we need to know, and we just play for those. And so it's just like, it's a beautiful thing for adult players, because then we don't have to juggle all these different plans and transition our brain back and forth. We can kind of like focus in and lock in on kind of the essence of the position. So here I'm able to just get my c5 break in. Now I could have done it right away. I kind of wanted to threaten an Elyekin's battery with my queen back here, and I thought that would be pretty good. So that's the beauty of it, is like, I don't have to break right here. I can take a little bit of time to set it up, because our position is so solid and he doesn't have any threats in this position. And so now the beauty is we get to take that with check, so we don't even lose a tempo. And now we have domination of this open file. So by using that pressure on the d4 square and combining it with that c5 break, we've actually managed to get in a position with the, like, I don't know if it's a winning advantage, but it's certainly an advantage that's either going to be a draw or a win. And if we have good endgame technique, we should be playing for 2 results in this position. So now he made this move, rook to f1. I'm assuming he's trying to, like, at some point bust this position open with f5. And so I kind of looked at this position and I decided, I guess it doesn't show our time here, but I was a little bit behind on time after the fiasco in the beginning. But I decided I would end up playing this and encouraging a liquidation of queens and just go to this rook endgame where I have control of the open file. And my thought is I can get my queen, I can get my maneuver my king over to this side of the board if I use this rook as a shield, and he's going to have a hard time getting his king over to that side without making some kind of concession. And we'll see how that plays out. I played h5. I just want to prevent this kind of thing, so I can kind of set up this fortress structure with my pawns, and then I can use my rook to protect f7 if need be, if he decides to try to do like a rook swing and come down here. Let him have his fun and strand his rook over there, because I can hold it with that rook, and then I can use my king to try to cause some problems for him. So now we kind of get this thing where we see his king is kind of stuck on that side of the board. He's stuck on the king side, and I can get my king on the queen side. So he's trying to lash out for some counterplay here. And now I'm trying to make some gains with my king. And now he plays this move, g5. And so his thought is he's trying to immobilize my queen side, or my king side, sorry, because I can't push this pawn, I can't push this pawn. And I thought he may do that, actually. So I kind of had a plan for that. And his thought is, well, now I can just try to move my rook over here, swap these rooks off, and then I'm going to have a better king and pawn endgame, because I can try to create a pass pawn over here, but he's going to have a hard time mobilizing his pawn majority on the king side while I push mine on the queen side. But I did have an idea for this, and it was this. The idea is if he exchanges, great. If not, now I have time to exchange and get my e5 break in, and then I can move my king to e6, push f6, and create my pass pawn. And we'll get into that position like we showed, where I had you pause and look at it. Just kind of a thematic way of playing these. So this is not surprising at all how it goes. And so we get in this position here. And I'm assuming my opponent probably thinks he's probably lost. And that's what I was thinking at the time too, as I was playing. And my opponent was actually really low on time here. At the end, he only had 1 minute and I had 3 minutes. I was able to play this end game more quickly because I kind of knew what my plan was, and whether it was right or wrong, at least I had a plan, and I was able to act on it. So he's trying to make inroads over here. And I guess one thing, I could have just pushed my g-pawn and and say, well, go ahead and go there, because then I'm just going to advance. You're going to be outside the square of this pawn. But I decided to just inch my king closer to his queenside pawns, advance my pawn, and now I made this move here. And he resigned here, and his thought is, well, I'm gonna take this pawn. He's gonna go here, grab all these pawns, eat them up, and then have these 2 pawns that he'll shove down the board, and there's nothing I can do about it. So this is where we get into the really fascinating idea. And I think I'm going to make a video on this, because there's 2 different ideas when you get to a king versus a rook pawn ending. And if you can get so it's just rook pawn and king versus king, the opponent king can, there's 2 ways they can do it. One way is they can just run and sit in the corner, and there's nothing that the side with the extra pawn can do. And another thing is like, even if I got my king here and my pawn here, if he can move his king to like c2 or c1 in this position, he can just shuffle them back and forth and keep my king locked in the corner. Now, I know that's kind of like abstract from viewing it from this, but I think I'm going to make a video, because my last 2 games were decided by these king and rook pawn. They were both in the Scandinavian defense, and I find that kind of fascinating. One thing I have put time into is studying pawning games. That's probably what I'm the best at for my rating, especially. But interestingly, the move that saves the day here, assuming, like I'm going to just try to go gobble his pawns, is this amazing move a6. And now I am forced to take this pawn. Otherwise, of course, he will just queen and promote that pawn. So I have to play here. And then now, amazingly, he can play c5. And that's a really fascinating idea, because now I cannot go over here. I cannot take this pawn, or this pawn runs and promotes. So he has basically paralyzed my ability to grab these pawns without making some kind of concession. So how we get to the position where we get this theme is, if I want to make any progress, I have to bust. Well, actually, it brings up another rule. Let me look at this. So right here, I cannot play this, because now this pawn would promote and I'm outside the square of that pawn, and so I can't catch his pawn. So I have to play this king to d5 move to not let this pawn get away if I ever want to play a5 to try to create my own passed pawn. The problem is now his king can just run for the corner, and I'll be left with an extra pawn, but it's a rook pawn. So let's just zoom through it real quickly, but it's really, really interesting. So now all he has to do is just go hide in the corner and shuffle back and forth and just sit in the corner. No matter how I try to do it, I'm going to end up in a position like this where, well, if I play here, he just goes here and it's stalemate. So I thought that was really interesting. He threw in the towel, and that would be a very hard thing to find with a minute on your clock. But, I'm well aware of this theme here. So maybe if a person, was playing a longer time control game and you had, more amount of time on your clock, you can find this amazing a6 move right here. It's just beautiful. And it just shows like how complex these end games are and how many opportunities you have. So don't ever like throw in the towel. And I think like as adult improvers, these are the kind of positions I want to get and learn, because, I made a video, but like the adult brain has a hard time kind of switching between tasks. And the beauty is if you play these simplified positions, you just have a few thematic ideas that you're fighting for. And then if you learn the end game well, you can try to get in these positions that are, even, but the side that knows them better is going to win, the lion's share of the games here. So I hope you found that interesting. I found it really fascinating, this A6 idea, and just how easy it was to play this game, even though I didn't play the opening the best. I was able to unwind, just hammer on that D4 pawn, get that C5 break in, and then get wrestle control of that open file. And that was enough to win this game. And I think you'll find, like, up until a pretty high level, players are not going to be able to make use of this slight advantage they get against the Scandinavian. It's a very difficult thing to do, to try to use that space advantage and come up with some kind of attack. It requires so much patience and understanding. And our position, even though the computer will say, we have a slight disadvantage, our ideas are easy. We pound on D4, we go for an E5 or C5 break. We might transpose into a Carlsbad structure, and then we try to get play on the C file. So it's just kind of a thing of beauty for adult improvers, because we can focus on, I'm trying to focus more on like visualization, and I'm working on the steps method and trying to learn other, areas of chess that don't tie me down to learning all these openings and then playing these dynamic pawn centers where, there's trying to keep track of so many things, and the adult brain trying to transition back and forth. And it's just kind of a recipe for disaster. At least it is for me personally. So anyway, I hope you found this game as interesting as I did and can take something from it. Have a good one.